So let's say you pick Odyssey 2 and you put it here. Then I'll pick Mother 3 and I'll put it here. Then you go and you go, oh, I think Galaxy 2 will be there. You can't put it directly next to a bet you just made, and you put it down here, and then I go. It's not that complicated. The free space is Smash. If Smash doesn't show up at all, that would be pretty funny. But we all assume Smash will be there, and it makes for a cool looking free space. Getting a bingo doesn't necessarily mean you win. Every bet that you get that's correct is 1 point, and if it ends up in a bingo, then that's an extra 5 points on top of that. So bingo essentially just means double points. You're up, take your pick.
I'm gonna do Breath of the Wild 2. I think Breath of the Wild will be shown. I think it's gonna come out next year early in like March or something.
It could even come out this year.
I just think that's a pretty good solid guess. Because if they're gonna show something big, I think that's like a very prime candidate.
Yeah, it's been a very long time since we've gotten Breath of the Wild 2 news, and I feel like Metroid and Bayo aren't even made by core Nintendo. I feel like Breath of the Wild is now Nintendo's sort of big game nowadays. Obviously, Mario and Mario Odyssey is also a big game for them. The Switch having that launch with Breath of the Wild 1 means that so many Switch fans are Breath of the Wild fans. It would be weird if they didn't talk about it at all.
Yeah.
I'm going with Shin Megami Tensei 5. It already got leaked, like a release date and description of the game got leaked. That seems to me, since it's a Switch exclusive, that information was supposed to be told in some sort of Nintendo announcement. But since it's a 2021 game, and it's a game that's been in development for a very long time, and it's from a publisher nowadays that's very well renowned for making high quality, well-reviewed games, it's something they're going to want to tout and talk about at least for a little bit, since it's their last time to really talk about it. And we haven't seen much gameplay either.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty safe bet. They haven't talked about it in a while, and it's supposed to be like one of their bigger games coming out this year. I'm gonna say Splatoon 3. Sure, you can get the thought process there. They've shown it. It's supposed to be like kind of story.
There's an emphasis on the story more so than other Splatoons.
So I wonder if they'll show some multiplayer or something. Maybe they'll just show like one of the new weapons or whatever. I don't know. I've never really played Splatoon, so I don't know what their like release cycle.
Well, Splatoon games usually come out in the first half of a year. If this was the game's last E3, it depends on how different it is. I think we all hope it's very different from 2, since it's coming out on the same console and it's a $60 game. And Splatoon games have set a precedent for adding a lot of content for free. It would be a hard bullet to bite if it looked very similar. And aesthetically, It looks very different, but I would like to see more than just a new weapon, new game mode, some sort of new twist on the gameplay, new mechanics, and some single-player mode that's significantly better than the single-player modes we got before. I'll go with Pokemon BDSP, a slightly better pick than Arceus because it's coming out this year.
Yeah.
Generally, when we get Pokemon games announced at the beginning of the year, we get a constant stream of information, like maybe new regional variants, a new character design. I know these games are supposed to be one-to-one remake, but I mean, we'd still like to see how characters look in the new art style. It could be because they've taken the criticism very seriously, and whatever models and designs they had before, they want to kind of polish up a bit more. Maybe not, maybe that's pretty hopeful, but for a game that's coming out in November and for a Pokemon game that kind of had only one trailer and not a deep dive at all, we don't know if the core game will change at all. We don't know if HMs are getting removed. We don't know if the TMs have changed. They've added more fire types. If the load times are much faster, they probably are. We don't know about the post game. We don't know about Distortion World. I don't know if we'll find out all of that, but there's a lot of questions around the game, and I think it would do the game better to show it off more, even if the art style didn't change. Just seeing more areas, I think, would make people come around on the art style a bit more if they know that there's a good game underneath. It's just strange that we haven't seen it, and E3 is a good place to show it off.
I agree. I mean, that was gonna be my pick. I really do want to see what all in all is gonna be in it. Like, I definitely like post game Distortion World and stuff. I am probably the most interested to hear about that. Animal Crossing, because I think that's the perfect softball. Oh, here's an announcement of what the new content that we're adding to the game. That's probably a good spacer between announcements. And they're updating the game. I think they'll probably discuss it. I really hope they add more items, because the Mario stuff they added, it was really cool. I think Zelda stuff would probably be the logical thing to add.
Because of the anniversary.
Yeah, I could see Metroid stuff closer to when Prime comes out, whenever that comes out.
2025, pretty long DLC period.
I just think Animal Crossing will be there. I think that's a safe pick, so I think that was a good one.
If they do show Animal Crossing, there's two routes they can go. Probably a Zelda update, and the easiest way to do that is to bring back a bunch of New Leaf Zelda content, put in Animal Crossing.
Plus, not just the New Leaf content, but I'm sure there would be like, you can add the Deku tree.
Yeah, and I'm sure they'd add a bunch of Breath of the Wild references too that didn't exist back then, like the Champion's Tunic, the Rusty Master Sword, the new flower from the game.
Imagine if they added a paraglider, so you could glide off the cliff. Maybe a bow and arrow functioning as a slingshot.
The light arrow, you just decimate a balloon. I think a sword would be cool for like cutting down multiple weeds at once or something. There's been talk about a really big Animal Crossing update, so we could see that here. If we go by New Leaf, it's probably too early for that because they dropped a really big update really late into New Leaf's life. It's something to keep in mind. I think the Zelda thing is most likely. Animal Crossing showing up in general, just because this is technically the first E3 since Animal Crossing came out, it's a good bet. The last thing we heard from Kamiya is it's up to Nintendo to see Bayonetta 3, which sounds like to me, I mean, I'm extrapolating a lot from a nothing comment. Since it's E3 time, I'll interpret it as they have something to show, but they're waiting for Nintendo's blessing, maybe. And I'm sure Nintendo would want to finally show this off. Apparently, development's been going well. I think we'll at least maybe see a teaser. Probably, maybe. They'll probably bring it up.
We'll probably get a nice little No More Heroes little blurb.
We've seen No More Heroes at pretty much every big event, every E3 and Game Awards, and each Nintendo Direct without break for a while. And this will be its last E3 before it comes out. I'm sure they still have content they want to announce or like story details they want to show off. We've seen it in even more stacked Directs, and since it's 40 minutes, I don't see why they wouldn't have it. Hopefully the bitrate will be slightly better and it won't look really bad. I'm going with Legends Arceus. It's slightly less likely than the Gen 4 regular remake, just going on how release dates work. Pokemon Company hasn't reacted in the past to other games, but coming out a week after Elden Ring is not a good metric for comparison, no matter how good your game is. There's going to be a lot of Elden Ring on the left, Legends on the right tweets. It's not going to look good no matter how polished they end up making it, if they can by January, which I kind of don't think they can. Maybe they don't delay it now, but they should talk about it. What we should believe, because of what they told us, is that this is its last E3. Pokemon doesn't usually do presentations at the end of the year, but that's because their games are usually out by then. They probably have more stuff to talk about, or at least more things to show off. And we see some actual areas, some trainers, some story details besides just the setting. And obviously we want to see the frame rate if it's gotten better.
It's a really interesting game.
I mean, just the fact that they're making essentially a core Pokemon game and only making one version is pretty amazing. That's what we've been wanting since birth.
I'm just so interested to see finally like a different Pokemon game.
Let's Go wasn't different enough.
Oh my god. Online update.
For Smash?
For NSO. I think they'll talk about like, oh, we're releasing more SNES games.
I was thinking this is like an actual update, not like a news update, in adding like a new console or...
Oh. Okay.
Am I stringing you along with this? Did I catfish you?
Yeah, you catfish me.
You could put it back. I'm confused. What? I mean, we could say if they announce the new SNES games.
No, I'm gonna stick with it.
Okay. If they announce any new game on the NSO Virtual Console thing.
I mean, personally, I think that they could put an N64 game on it or something. Because, I mean, I think they desperately need a better selling point for NSO.
Zelda 3D All-Star Mayhem. Because there's no way we could know exactly what their plans are for an all-star collection, if they'd bring back the HD remakes or the originals. Any announcement related to Ocarina, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, or Majora would count, okay?
Yeah, no, I agree.
I hope it's the 3D and HD versions, or we get the choice to choose between them. We didn't get the choice between N64 and DS versions of Mario 64, so I doubt it. And I also think they're gonna leave out Majora like how they left out Galaxy 2 if they want to do the 3-piece. Mostly because Ocarina, Wind Waker, and Twilight Princess all have the Master Sword. They all have Hyrule, one's a little wet, Ganon, Zelda. Majora lacks all of that. Also, if you're going for like the generational visual evolution aesthetic. If you show Ocarina gameplay next to Majora gameplay, the average guy won't really know the difference, whereas Wind Waker and Twilight Princess and Ocarina have very visually distinct art styles, even more so than Sunshine and Galaxy. But they can do whatever they want, as long as those games can come back, hopefully, in a well-priced way.
Earthbound. Every year we're like, it's gonna happen, and then it doesn't happen, but I think this might maybe be the time. I don't know. I see people talk about it so often that it seems like every time I think Nintendo's gonna drop it, because it's really not that much work to just release Mother 3. You know what I mean?
A little bit of work.
Yeah, I mean, but like proportionally speaking,
The money that they might make seems like
yeah.
an investment.
I just really think it would be a collection. I don't know why. I don't think they would just do Mother 3. I hope to God it wouldn't be a limited time purchase. I don't know. I don't like that model that they've been doing.
What if they did Devolver and they did physical exclusive and they made it super expensive collector's edition with like a Lucas statue and some stickers? I mean, I could see them dropping it like how they did with Shadow Dragon. Unfortunately, that was also limited. They put Mother 3 on Wii U only for Japanese, so they could do that if they did a GBA Virtual Console. It's strange that Earthbound isn't on Switch at all, even after they got it on 3DS and SNES Classic. I don't think there's any issues with porting or copyright, any of those scary things we used to think about Earthbound, which, if you want to get crazy conspiracy, they're saving it for a collection maybe. Same with Earthbound Beginnings, which isn't on the Switch either, which they put on Wii U very randomly. So a collection would definitely make people think that Nintendo gives a crap about Mother. I could see that. And even if it's not Mother 3, it still points if they throw Earthbound up. Maybe if they remake it or something, which they won't, but maybe they'll have a little symphony or something. Maybe some new Switch icons. I'm going with a new Kirby.
Ooh.
It's been a while since Star Allies. Fighters was more of like a half Kirby game, just a little one on the eShop only. I know the Kirby team were talking about at the end of last year wanting to release like a Kirby game that was going to change things. I think this will probably be a 3D Kirby. So even if it's not 3D, I think we'll definitely see a Kirby game. I think it'll have more content than Star Allies and it'll have a more new feel to it, hopefully. And even if it's not a mainline game, like a new side game seems likely, I feel like they're trying to do what Zelda's been doing and trying to get a Kirby game out every year, regardless of scale. And since there hasn't been a Kirby game yet this year, it makes sense to me that we'd see something Kirby related in this direct.
Prime 4. It's just been a long time since we've heard about it. In that same vein as Bayo 3, we're like, we've just known about it for so long. So anytime we have an information drop, you can safely guess that there's a chance one of those two games. I think Prime 4 has a good shot to be talked about. If it isn't, it isn't. We know it's being developed. We just don't know like anything about it really. So it'd be cool to see some gameplay or something, even if it isn't going to come out this year.
It really has been around for a long time, but we haven't seen a single, not even a CG representation of what the tone might be.
Yeah.
We don't even know if Samus is in it, is how broke we are right now for information on this game. The only thing we know is that it's after Prime 3, probably. Or it could be a Beyond Good and Evil 2 situation where it's actually a prequel. We have no idea. They should mention it at least. It's a little annoying because Prime 4 was announced a couple months after the Switch came out. I mean, the Switch came out in March, Prime 4 was announced in June. People bought Switches for Prime 4, and to not talk about it at all since they restarted development, can we at least get details on what it will be, you know? If you have nothing to show, can we get a guy standing there saying, we're about 20% done, we are trying to make this game. You know, they did this for Breath of the Wild back in the Wii U era. Aonuma stood up and he was like, we want to make a Zelda game where you could do the dungeons in any order, and you can enter the dungeons in any direction. And I think we should get that for Prime 4. Someone standing up and being like, we want you to be able to attack any boss in any order, or we want to have a weapon progression never seen in a Metroid game. Something that we can at least visualize. We want to go for a darker tone. We want to make it really colorful. Something that we can visualize at least, because we know nothing about this game.
Yeah.
Like, we deserve an update in a weird way. I don't like saying that usually, but they're pushing the consumer leniency dev relationship where a dev should talk about their game at this point.
I didn't even think about the idea that people bought Switches for Prime. I forgot about the fact that there's that long ago that it was announced. Like it's like, you know, it's a long time ago, but it's when you put it in perspective, like, I personally, if it isn't here, you know, I won't be heartbroken, but I know that there's just a lot of people that are looking for some smidgen of info.
Even if it's really far out, it would be a pretty legendary moment if they ended conference, the one more thing, and we get that sort of like classic Prime 1 pan into Samus's suit, and she starts doing a couple things, and then it cuts out.
I mean, that would be sick.
That would be, I think it would be a legendary E3 moment. I'm gonna go with the Fire Emblem remake. It's been rumored for a very long time. Even last year, before the pandemic stuff, people thought they might announce it at Fire Emblem Expo, but that didn't happen. I don't think Fire Emblem Expo even happened. Three Houses has been out for a while. It came out in 2019, just 2 years ago. They have somewhat of a Fire Emblem engine that they can work on. They can turn around Fire Emblem games pretty quick. Granted, console games still take much more effort than 3DS games. So going by Awakening versus Fates and Echoes turnaround times, you kind of need to scale them up a bit more to compare them to Switch releases. An announcement still makes sense. I think it'll probably be Genealogy, since that's the next one that hasn't been remade. There's been rumors that it'll be a Telly's game, probably Path of Radiance. But I think one of those will be announced. It's been a while since we've had a Fire Emblem game at all. From the Fire Emblem Direct we got right after the Switch was announced, it feels like Nintendo wants to make Fire Emblem one of those franchises that you could always look to for new content between Heroes, the remakes, and the core games, and Smash Brothers. I think people would be on board just to see the engine refined a bit. Three Houses was definitely a good game, but it was still kind of rough around the edges, especially if it's on Switch Pro as well. I think we could see a much prettier, more stylized Fire Emblem game.
Pikmin 4, it's kind of just one of those situations where we know it's a thing, right?
I don't know.
What's your take on that?
I think I don't know. I have no idea what Pikmin 4 is.
It's just one of those things that, like, it could happen, but it also very well could not happen.
Yeah, like everything.
Like everything in here besides Smash. Which even then
might not happen. Maybe Sakurai's crunched. There's a lot of elephants in this room, but there's one elephant that's a bit more elephanty. People have been talking like this thing's gonna happen every week.
The only issue I have with that idea is that they said that it's just gonna be software discussed.
That's true. I didn't think of that, actually. It's not unprecedented for Nintendo to break their own rules, though.
Yeah, no,
and it wouldn't be impossible to be like, yeah, there's a new Switch coming. I don't know. You're probably right, but I feel like it seems pretty concrete that there is some sort of Switch revision in the works being produced. And since everything's been leaking so much, sometimes it's in their best interest to just talk about it themselves. But then again, like the original Switch, they announced it. There were already a bunch of leaks, and they announced it extremely close to when they launched it. So I think they want to replicate anything they can with the original Switch. So it's also possible that they push it as like, it could be out and they won't announce. I could have bought it and played the new Smash ray tracing update, and they will still be like, we're going to announce something Switch related soon. I forgot that they said it's mostly software, but you never know.
Yeah, you never know.
Reddit told me it's happening.
Metroid Prime Trilogy. That's like just something that's been rumored for so long, and I could see them saying Prime 4 is still under development and we think it's gonna come out in 2022. But if you not played the series, well, we have the perfect, like, it's a good opener to people that have not played the Prime series. It's also a good way to hold people over that have been waiting for Prime 4.
Having the trilogy there, so people who would like to catch up actually can without using those good old dolphins, would be really nice of them to let us give them money for.
Agreed.
Yeah, and it would work really well on the Switch with gyro controls. It would pretty much be a match made in heaven for the kind of wonky Prime camera style and just the graphics. The potential for lighting or texture updates for those games that already look pretty good to be remastered into 1080 would be really nice. Even if they don't, that's 3 really good games in one package on the Switch. Odyssey 2.
Ooh.
I mean, the last Mario Odyssey game came out in 2017, right? They're already talking about a new Zelda game. We all know Mario games don't take as long as Zelda games. This is well-known fact. They made Odyssey 1 in 2.5 years. They made Zelda Breath of the Wild 1 in like 5 years. It'll be 4 years at some point this year since Odyssey 1 came out, which is enough time to make Odyssey 2, even when you consider that they developed Bowser's Fury in that time as well. Like this, it doesn't have to be called Odyssey 2, it can just be another 3D Mario, obviously. It could be Galaxy 3, it could be Super Mario Sandwich, but they probably have a Mario game really close to done, I'd imagine, or at least showcaseable, maybe.
Dante, he'd be a good Smash character. We haven't had a Capcom rep. He's just one of those characters that would just be so sick to have in Smash.
True. I mean, a lot of his games are on the Switch. More Devil May Cry games are on the Switch than Star Fox games. There's moveset potential, obviously. He's got the popularity. He's not the most iconic compared to other picks, but doesn't really matter anymore because we just got Pyra and Mithra and Byleth relatively recently. So there's not a lot of action game characters. It lets you fulfill a dream match, you know, like Link versus Cloud, Mario versus Sonic. With Dante, we could get that Bayonetta versus Dante.
Oh, that'd be so sick.
He checks every box for the most part. There's not a lot of knocks against him other than he's from a mature game, which doesn't really matter because Bayo and Joker are in the game. The only reason I don't see Dante as like a shoo-in is only because his competition is very strong as well. And there's other characters I feel like Nintendo would choose over Dante.
Yes.
Let's say Dante is in the past, and this is just debating whether he's the next announced. There's 2 lines of logic. You do him last because he's cool, and he would kill everyone in his trailer, and then you could end the path really cool. The other line of logic is you do not end on Dante because they ended on Bayo last time, and that was an absolute disaster. Just because he's also an action game character obviously doesn't mean he'll be as broken as Bayonetta. I know that's not how it works. He went for Witch Time, obviously. But it's something to think about from the team's perspective that they don't want to duplicate past mistakes. Also, they don't tend to end on cool characters, like the coolest character in the past. They ended on Duck Hunt in Smash 4, Byleth in the Fighter Pass, and Incineroar in the Ultimate lineup. So there's not a lot of rationale to leaving the best character for last. So if he was one of the last 2 characters, it would make sense that they would make him the E3 character. This is a Minmin Amiibo, obviously because it's the next Smash Amiibo. Not a software pick. It's really hard for Nintendo not to slip in the Amiibo. I mean, we all know they're gonna mention the Skyward Sword Amiibo when they talk about Skyward Sword. That's not even a question to me, because that's the only different thing about the game is that it has DLC. If they talk about Smash, they'll probably announce the next Smash lineup. They don't have to. That's something they typically do in Sakurai Presents. But it's also something they could throw into the Direct so it gets more attention. Realistically, I actually don't think that'll happen.
Give me Hayabusa. Wasn't he rumored like a long time ago?
Yeah, he's come up a lot. The biggest argument for him is that one, Ninja Gaiden is an extremely iconic game series. They just had a trilogy, a pretty massive trilogy release on the Switch. And in general, Tecmo Koei is a massive contributor to Nintendo nowadays. They made a Zelda game last year. They pretty much saved 3 Houses entirely. Intelligent has said multiple times that the game would not have been possible without Tecmo Koei helping out. They made Fire Emblem Warriors, they made Hyrule Warriors originally. They've been releasing all kinds of games on Switch, Atelier series. There's no denying that Tecmo Koei is an extremely valued company towards Nintendo. It's a very valued relationship, just like Microsoft is. And if there was a Tecmo Koei mascot, it would probably be Hayabusa, and he'd have a distinct moveset. And it's an NES game originally, so it would fit that sort of classic tier of characters with Simon and Mega Man and stuff. To Persona 5, this is not super likely, but it's been talked about on Switch for a long time. One of, if not the most anticipated ports on Switch. The only problem is the whole Sony relationship. We haven't seen this particular iteration of Persona on anything outside of PlayStation yet, but we have seen Strikers on Switch, we've seen the Q games on 3DS, 4 came to PC, there's rumors of 5 coming to PC, so I think the wall is starting to come down on this game. We might see it announced, especially because Royal is just a definitive version of this. I think PlayStation will be like, sure, they can have the shitty version. We give it away for free nowadays. Plus, if there was any question if it could run, even if they don't mention Switch Pro, they can be like, yeah, it'll run well, and then later clarify that it's gonna run really well on Pro.
Crash. I just want to collect Smash characters on my bingo board at this point. I feel like it's a good row closer that could luckily hit.
Well, the thing about this strategy is, at best, only 2 will come true.
Yeah.
We might get a glimpse of the next Monolithsoft project, which would be really great, whether it's Xeno 3 or a new Zelda or whatever they're trying to do. It's not impossible. It would be really nice to see what they're hiring for, what it is they're shooting for, even if it's a long way out. But Monolithsoft, despite the scale of their games, are actually very fast when it comes to developing games somehow. It's been a long time since Xenoblade 2 came out, but it's not like they haven't been busy. Because they remade Xenoblade 1, they did Torna, which is essentially a new game, the Animal Crossing, Zelda DLC, and they're working on Breath of the Wild 2, which sounds like a lot to me. I have no idea how far along they would be on a new project. It's been 4 years by December since 2 came out. So I would like to see early glimpses of this game, but they might not do it. I'm being very wishful with this one.
Give me Mario Kart 9. I don't think it's even been rumored. MK8 just kind of fills that role of the Mario Kart game on the Switch. But I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing them make a new one.
I think this is pretty slept on. A new Nintendo IP is pretty open-ended. The Garage game is a new Nintendo IP. Fitness was a new Nintendo IP. The Get Good or whatever was a new Nintendo IP. I don't think this is particularly very unlikely at all. It's possible. It can be anything. I think Nintendo, they don't make $60 big bets very often, but they do make weird stuff all the time. They're actually making new IPs pretty much every year, just not Splatoon and ARMS tier new IPs. So it's not unlikely. We'll probably get Nintendo fishing or whatever.
Zelda remake, I mean, it'd be the anniversary. There's a good chance that it would remake a Zelda game.
And they finished Link's Awakening. If they recycle the engine and did an Oracle remake, then they could get something done. Also, the Phantom Hourglass thing leaked at some point, so there might be a Phantom Hourglass remake of some sort. My only apprehension is if they do Skyward Sword this year, and they do 3D Zeldas this year, that's a lot of old Zelda, especially if they try to throw a Breath of the Wild at the beginning of next year. They're really saturating their brand. So I feel like even if they finished a remake, they might hold it out and just sit on it until there's like a Zelda shortage. This kind of lasted a while. I feel like because no one talks about X, we act like it wouldn't happen. But out of all the Wii U games that are left, which are like Star Fox, Nintendo Land, and this pretty much, this feels the most likely. It's just a game with a lot of content that got slept on, and it's an open world Monolithsoft game like Breath of the Wild. If they just market it less like a Xenoblade game and just as an open world RPG, with a realistic art style, I think people would be open to it, especially because Xenoblade's blown up. We got Pyra and Mithra and Smash. We got the other 2 Xenoblade games, so it doesn't feel like, oh, do I have to play the other games first? Like, you can, but you also don't even have to. This is one of those games that, like Tropical Freeze and Bayonetta 2, this is its time to sell really well, and I'm honestly surprised they haven't done it yet. Maybe they didn't want to saturate Xenoblade too much because we got 2 in 2017, 1 in 2020, but I mean, it's probably the best port that they can choose because Zero and Nintendo Land would take a lot of tweaks. In Xenoblade X, you basically don't have to change anything because the game didn't use the tablet very often. You know? Especially if this was like tagged into the Switch Pro somehow and there was some sort of loading time enhancements or something you could get out of that. That would be really cool.
Give me Metroid 5 with new 2D. Just after rewatching the Gamma video, it's not a horrible pick.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're gonna get a new Metroid announcement, and it's either gonna be 2D or a remake, and I can't figure out which. I feel like they've been so safe with Metroid 2D games that it'd be so up their alley to remake Super Metroid. And I don't think people would be upset about that because that's everyone's favorite. I would like to see an HD remake of Super Metroid. I think most people would. but they could also do a new one, and that would be really nice. I'll take Lloyd and Smash. It could be Lloyd or Yuri, just because they're both prominent Tales of characters. I am pretty confident this character will be in the past because of the popularity, because they're a Bandai character, because their content was cut from the base game and never returned, and there's rumors that they were planned. It just seems... So I'm pretty confident they're in the past. So to me, it's just a 50-50 whether they're 5 or 6. And at this point, my logic is I wouldn't give any of these others any higher than a 50-50. So yeah, I generally wouldn't want to pick a Smash character. I feel like I don't like that strategy.